Tat Sat. Welcome to Gyan Bhakti. We are currently exploring the scripture Mysticism of Mahabharata. Commentaries by my worshipful Guruji, Swami Jyotirmayananda Ji Maharaj, narrated by myself, Swami Nikhilananda. So in today's satsang, we will continue from where we left off yesterday, the birth of Dhritarashtra's sons, the Kauravas. Dhritarashtra, who was the blind king, not the king, but the blind elder brother of Pandu. But we will see that he does get the kingdom later on. That is part of the episode and the story of Mahabharata. Dhritarashtra was married to Princess Gandhari. At the time she married him, Gandhari vowed, "I will not live a life with any advantage that my husband does not have. Since my husband cannot see, I will also deprive myself of vision." So she bandaged her own eyes with silken cloth and kept them that way all throughout her life. According to the story, after a long pregnancy, Gandhari gave birth to a mass of undifferentiated flesh rather than a child in normal human form. Sage Vyasa came to her rescue and divided that mass into 100 parts, placing each one in a container with medicinal herbs. As we in today's world call it the test tube baby. So that technology probably existed back then through these sages. In the course of time, each portion gave rise to a child, the ancient equivalent, as we discussed, of today's concepts. In all, 100 sons were born in this way to Gandhari and Dhritarashtra. The first of the children to be born was Duryodhana. At the time of his birth, the atmosphere was filled with evil, inauspicious omens, like foxes howling and dogs barking or crying. All kinds of sad things started to happen. Puzzled about this, Dhritarashtra consulted his wise brother Vidura, asking him about the future of this first son. Vidura predicted at that time that Duryodhana, as evil incarnate, would become the destroyer of the whole Kaurava family and should be renounced without delay. However, due to attachment, Dhritarashtra ignored the guidance of Vidura and became devoted to fulfilling all the misguided whims of his son throughout Duryodhana's life. Let's explore the mystic symbolism of the Pandavas and Kauravas. So we have now studied how the Pandavas were born and how the Kauravas were also born. And since they were cousins, we will discuss the whole episode, the story of Mahabharata, through their family interweavings. Due to Kunti's invocation of deities, all 5 of the Pandavas had a divine birth and they embody all that is good within the human heart: fearlessness, contentment, joyousness, goodness, generosity, and other divine qualities we call as Daivi Sampat, as the Gita terms it. The Kauravas, on the other hand, represent the negative aspect of personality: anger, greed, hatred, pride, conceit, and other demoniac qualities, or Asuri Sampatti. In Vedic times, Indra was the term used for the soul in bondage, Jiva, as well as in the state of liberation. Indra, the celestial deity, due to ignorance, operated in every individual as the Jiva. Jiva meaning individual soul. Therefore, the senses are called Indriyas because they were meant to serve the Indra within us. In the Pandava family, Arjuna represents the Indra, the Jiva, the individual soul. His brothers represent the 4 Purusharthas: Dharma, ethical values; Artha, material values; Kama, vital or social values; and Moksha, infinite spiritual values of life. Arjuna, assisted by his brothers, or the soul assisted by the 4 values, is led by Krishna, the divine self to the ultimate goal of life. Yudhishthir represents Dharma as well as Moksha. Bhima represents Artha. Nakula and Sahadev represent together as Kama. Physical charm was represented by Nakula and psychological charm by Sahadev. Behind the stories that unfold in the Mahabharata is the message that righteousness or dharma and aspiration for self-realization, moksha, must be the basis of a truly healthy and successful life. If one seeks material prosperity, meaning artha, and social fulfillment or kama, without ethical and spiritual values being uppermost in one's mind, then life is truly lived in vain. Therefore, the scriptures guide us that we should always have the ethical foundation, ethical principles as our foundation, and liberation as the roof, and then artha and kama as the ways and means for us to achieve these things. The Pandavas based their lives on dharma and moksha, and artha and kama were always dominated by these ethical and spiritual goals of life. So they led their life in a very holy and pure way. This is portrayed by Bhima, Arjuna, Nakul, Sahadev's respect for Yudhishthir's leadership throughout the Mahabharata. So they would be listening to their eldest brother Yudhishthir, and whatever he said they would honor. The Kauravas, on the other hand, based their lives on artha and kama, meaning the materialistic and vital goals of life, and overlooked dharma and moksha completely. Naturally, if one pursues material and vital goals without dharma as the basis, they are following a demoniac path. The Kauravas were devotees of adharma or unrighteousness, and their personalities represent different aspects of evil. The external conflict between the Pandavas and Kauravas therefore graphically illustrates the central theme of the Mahabharata, that life is a constant internal battle between the forces of virtue and the forces of vice, the forces of light and the forces of darkness. This battle rages at all times within the heart of every individual. Again and again, the negative in us tries to overpower the good. But ultimately, it is the positive, the truth, that must triumph. Arjuna and his four brothers are always there within each of us, and they are being guided to eventual victory over ignorance by Krishna. Krishna meaning the divine self, the indwelling reality within every heart. The next episode is the Pandavas go to Hastinapur, the capital city. After the birth of his 5 sons, Pandu eventually was swayed into temptation through Madri, because she was very beautiful, and one day she was taking a bath in Mother Nature in the mountains, and Pandu gave in to that temptation, and in accordance with the curse of the deer spirit, immediately died. Following an ancient tradition, Madri allowed herself to be cremated along with her husband. She wanted to, so this is where this comes from the sati pratha. Following that, she also gave up her body, but Kunti remained behind to look after all of the 5 children, and Madri had requested that from Kunti. Eventually, Kunti and the 5 Pandava boys who had been growing up in the forest were brought by sages to the capital city of Hastinapur, presently known as Delhi, New Delhi, where they were introduced to their uncle, King Dhritarashtra, and to his 100 sons known as the Kauravas. So while Pandu was in the forest, Dhritarashtra was being the caretaker king on behalf of Pandu. But then now that Pandu passed away, Dhritarashtra became the king, although he was blind, but he was being supported by Bhishma, the super warrior, and by Vidura, the wise minister, who were his family also. The Pandavas and Kauravas then grew up together under the protection of Bhishma. He was the great friend and guide to all the young men and saw to all aspects of their education. So Bhishma is one of the deepest character in the Mahabharata. Of course, Lord Krishna is the soul behind Mahabharata, but it's beautifully woven together with all the intricate and detailed mysteries. So, and there are all these teachers also, the gurus. So we'll study about Guru Dronacharya. Bhishma employed a teacher named Dronacharya to teach archery and other similar arts, as well as knowledge of scriptures to the 5 Pandavas, the 100 Kauravas, and other princes in neighboring kingdoms. So he was a very well respected teacher and very good in archery and fighting skills. In the art of archery, Arjuna became the most skilled, and his guru was extremely pleased with him. With great affection, Dronacharya taught him everything he knew, even more than his own son Ashwathama. So he gave more knowledge to Arjuna than even to his own son, because Arjuna was a very worthy disciple. He knew, except for a few secret skills that his own son had persuaded his father to impart to him alone. So Dronacharya taught him everything. Eklavya, one day, a young boy named Ekalavya, a member of an outcast forest tribe, came to enroll in the royal school so that he could receive instructions from Dronacharya, the well-respected teacher. According to tradition, a person of his social status could not be permitted, so Eklavya was turned away, denied admission. Determined to be guided by Dronacharya, yet realizing that it was impossible for him to receive guidance directly, Ekalavya made a statue of Dronacharya out of clay and installed it in a forest clearing that became his classroom. So we will study more about this episode in tomorrow's satsang. This is Swami Nikhilananda. Om Tat Sat.